Random House Audio presents The Venetian Betrayal by Steve Barry. Read for you by Erik Singer. Babylon, May 323 BCE. Alexander of Macedonia had decided to kill the man himself. Usually he delegated such tasks, but not today. His father had taught him many things, but one lesson above all he'd never forgotten. Executions were for the living. 600 of his finest guardsmen stood assembled, fearless men who had surged head-on into opposing ranks or protected his vulnerable flank. Thanks to them, the indestructible Macedonian phalanx had conquered Asia. But there'd be no fighting today. Alexander studied the scene through unusually tired eyes. He was leader of Macedonia and Greece, lord of Asia, ruler of Persia. Some called him king of the world, others a god. But he was also human. His beloved Hephaestion lay dead. The man had been everything to him: confidant, cavalry commander, grand vizier, lover. Aristotle had taught him as a child that a friend was a second self, and that had been Hephaestion. He dismounted from his horse. The day was bright and warm. Spring rains from yesterday had passed. An omen? Perhaps. He trod across the soft earth, fresh mud sucking at his sandals. Small in stature, his stocky body bore witness to countless wounds. From his Albanian mother he'd inherited a straight nose, a brief chin, and a mouth that could not help but reveal emotion. He was clean-shaven, his blond hair unkempt, his eyes, one blue-gray, the other brown, always wary. He prided himself on his patience, but of late he'd found his anger increasingly hard to check. "Physician," he said as he approached, "it is said that prophets are best who make the truest guess. From Euripides, a play I much enjoy. But more is expected from a prophet than that, would you not say?" Glaucius was wild-eyed with terror, and he should be scared. Yesterday, during the rain, horses had bent the trunks of two tall palms close to the ground. There they'd been roped, the two lashings intertwined into a single binding, then fastened to another stout palm. Now the physician was tied in the center of the V formed by the trees, each arm secured to a rope, and Alexander held a sword. "It was your duty to make the truest guess," he said, his eyes tearing. "Why could you not save him?" "I tried." "How? You did not give him the draft." "There was an accident. Most of the supplies spilled. I sent an emissary for more, but he'd not arrived by the time of the final illness." "Were you not told to always have plenty available?" "I did, my king. There was an accident." Terrified eyes pleaded for mercy, but all Alexander could see was his lover's dead glare. As children, they'd both been students of Aristotle and had bonded thanks to a shared appreciation of Homer and the Iliad. Hephaestion had been Patroclus to Alexander's Achilles. Now he was gone. "You're my physician," he said. "My life is in your hands. The lives of all those I hold dear are in your hands, yet you failed me." He fought the urge to weep. "With an accident." He laid the sword flat across the taut ropes. "Please, my king, I beg you, it was not my fault." He stared at the man. "Not your fault?" His grief evolved into anger. "How could you say such a thing?" He raised the sword. The time last fall at Ecbatana was to be a festival in honor of Dionysus, with athletics, music, and 3,000 actors and artists for entertainment. The drinking and merriment should have continued for weeks, but the revelry ended when Hephaestion fell sick. "I told him not to eat," Glaucius said, "but he ignored me. He ate fowl and drank wine." "And where were you?" Alexander did not wait for an answer. "At the theater, watching a performance while my Hephaestion lay dying." "The fever, my king. You know its force. It comes quickly and overpowers. You cannot have food. Refraining would have provided the time needed for the draft to arrive." Alexander noticed a restlessness among his men. What had Aristotle said? A king speaks only through deeds. He brought the sword close to Glaucius's bearded face. "The fever has again taken me," he whispered. "Then, my king, you will need me. I can help." Alexander whirled the sword behind the physician. "I won't require your help." "No, please!" Glaucius screamed. Alexander sawed the tight strands of rope with the blade, strands released with pops like bones breaking. One more blow and the sword bit through the remaining restraints. The two palms, freed from their hold, rushed skyward, one left, the other right, Glaucius tied in between. The man shrieked as his body momentarily stopped the tree's retreat, then his arms ripped from their sockets and his chest exploded in a cascade of crimson. His body thudded to the wet earth, his arms and part of his chest dangling in the branches. Quiet returned as the trees again stood straight. Alexander faced his men and shrieked, His men repeated the Macedonian war chant, their cries echoing off the fortifications of Babylon. He waited until the sound quieted, then called out, "Never forget him!" He knew they would wonder if he meant Hephaestion, or the hapless soul who'd just paid the price of disappointing his king. But it did not matter. He planted the sword into the wet earth and retreated to his horse. What he'd said to the physician was true. The fever was once again upon him, and he welcomed it. Part 1. Copenhagen, Denmark. Saturday, April 18th, the present. 11:55 p.m. The smell roused Cotton Malone to consciousness. Sharp, acrid, with a hint of sulfur, and something else, sweet and sickening, like death. He opened his eyes. He lay prone on the floor, arms extended, palms to the hardwood, which he immediately noticed was sticky. What happened? He'd attended the April gathering of the Danish Antiquarian Booksellers Society a few blocks west of his bookshop, near the gaiety of Tivoli. He liked the monthly meetings, a few drinks, some friends, and lots of book chatter. Tomorrow morning he'd agreed to meet Cassiopeia Vitt. Her call yesterday had surprised him. He hadn't heard from her since Christmas, when she'd spent a few days in Copenhagen. He'd been cruising back home on his bicycle when he'd decided to check out the unusual meeting location she'd chosen, the Museum of Greco-Roman Culture. Cassiopeia rarely did anything on impulse, so a little advanced preparation wasn't a bad idea. He'd found the address, which faced the Friedrichsholmes Canal, and noticed a half-open door to the dark building. He'd parked his bike. The last thing he remembered was grasping the doorknob. He was now inside the museum. In the ambient light that filtered in through two plate-glass windows, he saw a space decorated in typical Danish style, a sleek mixture of steel, wood, glass, and aluminum. The right side of his head throbbed, and he caressed a tender knot. He stood and steadied himself against a glass display case. His fingertips came away sticky and smelly, with the same nauseating odor. His shirt and trousers were damp, as was his hair, face, and arms. Whatever covered the museum's interior coated him, too. He stumbled toward the front entrance and tried the door. Double deadbolt. A key would be needed to open it from the inside. He stared back into the interior. The ceiling soared 30 feet. A wood and chrome staircase led up to a second floor that dissolved into more darkness. A noise disturbed the silence. Clicks and whines like gears working, coming from the second floor. His training as a Justice Department agent urged him to investigate. He silently climbed the stairs. The chrome banister was damp, as were each of the laminated risers. 15 steps up, more glass and chrome display cases dotted the hardwood floor. Marble reliefs and partial bronzes on pedestals loomed like ghosts. Movement caught his eye 20 feet away. An object rolling across the floor, maybe 2 feet wide with rounded sides, tight to the ground like one of those robotic lawnmowers he'd once seen advertised. When a display case or statue was encountered, the thing stopped, retreated, then darted in a different direction. A nozzle extended.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?